Hi, everyone. Welcome to Just Ruth's online cooking workshop. My name is Brooke. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be teaching today alongside my wonderful host, Irene, who's going to be helping manage the chat, answering any questions you might have, getting clarifications for you. And folks, if you want any Spanish interpretation, Irene is here to help with that. So just send us a message in the chat. We're probably just going to jump right in and get started today. I'm just going to start off by saying we are sorry. We initially planned for this recipe to be with a local trout, and our provider kind of at the last minute that fell through. So we were able to get some local chicken breasts, but this recipe was intended to be cooked with trout. I think it's still going to be really delicious, but this is going to be my first time making it with chicken. So just be patient with me. We'll work through it together. But I do encourage you, if you're able to purchase any trout and try this recipe on your own with fish like flounder, trout, salmon, that would all be good. I really do suggest it. We were going to buy in steelhead trout, and hopefully during another workshop we can practice with that, because I know we had some requests from folks who wanted to work more with fish. So I promise we will get some fish in those DIY kits at some point soon. I'm going to walk through the supplies that I have out. You might need a few more things, but just to give you a heads up and a prep, let's start with the vegetables that were in our kit. So we have corn. It's not shucked. And so we're going to be shucking it and pulling the kernels off of the cob. We've got a pint of cherry tomatoes. We have some wonderful, still beautiful looking fresh dill. Lots of green beans. If you want to take a moment and sort through, maybe one or two of yours have started going bad, you can toss those if you want. And then, of course, we have chicken. So we've got, this is from Reed Farm. That's in Sunderland, Massachusetts. It's chicken breast. That should be unthawed. I always say unthawed. It's just thawed. That should be thawed. And if you haven't thawed your chicken, I would go ahead and stick that in the microwave on a defrost setting so that you can get that quickly ready to work with. Yeah, so today it's a pretty simple recipe. I've got a cutting board and a nice sharp knife. I used a knife with some weight to it. Not everyone's going to have that, but it does help with the kernels, getting the kernels off the cob. They probably will spill over into everywhere, so it might be a little bit messy. I haven't mastered a trick, so maybe you could help me with that. I'm using a large oven-safe skillet. We're going to cook the chicken partway, just in this pan, and finish it in the oven with some of the vegetables. So it has to be stove and oven safe. I just got out a colander so I can rinse some of my vegetables. I have a bowl that it could be a small bowl or a large bowl, but I'm making sort of the marinade mixture in here with the coconut milk. So that's why I have that. In our kit, core supplies that we have is vinegar. We use red wine vinegar. The recipe called for sherry. This is a great substitution. Anytime you don't have sherry, you can use red wine vinegar. Some Dijon or spicy mustard, some coconut milk. We'll use about a cup out of this can. If I don't remember to remind you, it's really good to shake these before you open them, so that the fat and the rest of the more watery liquid kind of blend together, because we want full fat when we're cooking this dish. And I've got some brown sugar. Regular sugar will work too if you don't have it. If you don't eat sugar, maple syrup or honey could work too. Salt and pepper, of course. I don't know if I've ever cooked anything without salt and pepper. I got some olive oil, measuring spoons, a can opener for my coconut milk. I just brought these kitchen shears to open up the chicken package. 1 cup for measuring The coconut milk, or really you're just going to use about 2/3 of a can. So if you don't want to measure, don't worry about it. And you might need an extra plate or bowl here or there. The other thing is we're going to cook our green beans in aluminum foil. If you don't have aluminum foil, you will put your green beans right in the cast iron. So don't worry about that. And then I have a meat thermometer. So everybody's chicken is a little bit different sized. And depending on how much you brown it in the first step, it might cook through more quickly, or it might, some people's chicken will take longer than others. So that's why I think a meat thermometer is great. If you can't source one of these, you can also pull the chicken out, cut it, and wait until the juices run clear. They shouldn't be running pink or red. They should run clear, and that tells us our chicken's done. Otherwise, we're looking for 165 on the thermometer at the thickest part of the meat. All right, I think it's time to get started. Let's get chefing. So this recipe called for raw corn, but we're actually going to put it into the oven to cook the way that I'm doing it. If you want to keep it raw, you can shuck it and add it at the end. But for now, I'm just going to alleviate or remove all the kernels from the cob. And this can be a little bit messy. So I'm going to use a compost bucket. And so I'm just pulling down the sides, getting those fine silks off. You can do that just running it underwater. And basically, if you don't have the hand strength to do it, you can cut right at where the kernels stop, or you can just take your hand and break it like that. So you've got a beautiful corn cob and probably corn silks everywhere like me. When I was a kid, we would always have to do this outside. Yeah, this is my house now, so I can do what I want. All right, and so two cobs should be just fine. I have 3 out here. I'm probably just going to use 2. I want ideally, a half cup or a cup of corn. If you love corn, you want to eat as much of it as possible, then do a couple more cobs if you have them at home. So just peel and break. And I'll give you guys an extra second to get yourselves cleaned up. And I might do this one more time with mine just to demo in case someone's coming on late. So I'll save my 3rd corn to demo that. And what I'm going to do is just do a nice rinse under the water to get all these hairs out. All right, I'm going to basically, if it's not flat on the bottom thick part, you can very much just easily slice it to make a flat bottom. But the goal is to have a flat bottom right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my knife down the length of the corn. And so I'm not cutting into an area that's too difficult to cut into. I'm not cutting into the cob. I'm just going after the kernels. And once you've made your first cut, you can see where the line is that you want to cut on the next row. And you're going to lose some of these kernels off your cutting board. It just happens. You could do it into a bowl if you'd like, but I want to show you on this cutting board what I'm doing. So I go across all 4 sides. And then if I missed any on the edges, I'll go back through those. And you don't want to cut too deep into the cob because it gets a little hard and chewy there. So I'm done with this one. And I'm going to put this corn in a bowl off to the side. I do not need it right now. I'm just getting all my vegetables prepped for the dish first. That's why I like using big knives like this, so you can scoop everything pretty easy. I don't have a flat bottom. I'm going to make my life a little bit easier and cut one. Do the same thing. So alternatively, you could cook your corn, just boil the whole cob for, 5-6 minutes. Once you've peeled it, that's also an option, but I want our coconut milk to absorb some of the like nice sweetness of the corn when we're cooking this dish. So we're gonna do it this way, but do however you like. And I'm gonna get myself a little cleaned up here because I can't stand looking at my mess. And by way of continuing to prep our vegetables so we can toss everything in at once, you could give your green beans a rinse if you haven't already, and you can start trimming the ends and halving those. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So each end of the green bean has let's see if you can see that, a pointy end and an end where the stem was. You can break those off by hand. You could line them all up, cut those ends off on both sides. That's kind of a little bit quicker. So I'm going to finish doing that first with all my green beans. And it doesn't look like anyone's joined in late, so I don't need to repeat. Okay, so it does for me help to just line these up so I can chop the tips off a little bit quicker. If you're a step ahead of me or you want to leave these ends on, which is fine, you could leave them on and then when you eat them, just not eat the hard stems. You will want to have these green beans. So just slice them in half, not lengthwise, widthwise, or hamburger cuts. You could certainly cut them lengthwise, and that would look very beautiful, but I think it would take a long time. And sometimes I leave these on, sometimes I don't, kind of depends on the mood I'm in. But if you had to choose one side, it's going to be the one where the stem was. That's always going to have a tougher, difficult to digest stem on that end, so you don't want to leave it. I can tell these are locally picked because there's a blade of grass in mine. And that happens sometimes on the farm. Okay, so I've got my green beans finished. I'm going to put those to the side. Oh, I didn't finish them. I just ignored my advice to you. We're going to cut them in half. You can cut them in half or in thirds, whatever you'd like to do. Just want to be able to move them around and fit them into an aluminum foil pocket. All right, green beans are chopped. Corn is husked off the cob. Now we're going to bruise or cut in half your cherry tomatoes. Now, if you are sensitive to tomatoes, but still want to use them, just don't use all of them. There are a lot of tomatoes in this recipe. You don't need to use them all. You can save them and make like a tomato basil mozzarella salad or just tomato with balsamic vinegar. Just eat them with some salt or on salads. You don't have to use them all. So bruising is a little bit messier, but that would be just breaking open the skin so that the juices can start to come out. And because that's messier, that's not what I'm choosing to do. But that's something you'll often see in dishes that require oven roasted tomatoes, is you kind of just give the juice a pocket to escape. Some of these are quite large, so they're not going to cook at the same rate as the small ones if I cut them in half. So I might cut those into quarters. So I have them and then have them again. And I think once you have about a full cup, a cup and a half of tomatoes, you can stop there. So I'll show you what that looks like when I get there. For maximum flavor with tomatoes, you actually shouldn't store them in the fridge. They like to be on the counter. Sometimes if I feel like my tomatoes are getting close to being, in this place that I can't eat them anymore, I will I will stick them in the fridge, which is what I did with these, just in case, because God, when we get our deliveries so early in the week, I have to make sure they stay good. So I'm rounding about half the pint right now, tomatoes that I have, and I'm thinking that I'm getting pretty close. So I'm going to say we're probably only going to use about half a pint of these tomatoes. And you can save the rest for something else. Right? Maybe one more. So that's how much I have left. And I'd say that's a good cup and a half of tomatoes. Okay. So the last vegetable that we are going to prep is going to be our, or not vegetable, I guess herb, is dill. And we're going to use about half the dill in the beginning with a marinade, and the other half of the dill is going to be stirred in at the very end. Like really any herb, cilantro, basil, the stems are edible and they do taste just like the herb. So go ahead and try that if you want. So I'm not going to, especially with dill, it's nice and soft. I'm not going to be picky about de-stemming or removing the leaves from the stem. If I was, I would probably just, hand pull them off. But I think as long as we chop up those stems nice and small, they'd be a great addition. And I'll probably cut it about right here. So that's when my stems start getting thicker. And we're looking for about a cup of dill. So that's not going to be this whole thing. If you want for a measurement, just to, double check how much you've gotten, you can use a cup and sort of look at like, yeah, what I cut off is just at a cup. And so we're gonna roughly chop this dill, except for on the stems. The stems will do a finer chop. Otherwise, we're roughly chopping. So I'll show you the finer chop of the stems. I'm just going pretty close, like I'm doing scallions or something, or garlic chives. And I'm about, yeah, perfect. And then I'm going to do a rough chop. Fabulous. I missed one stem. And I've said this before about a few different herbs, but if you ever don't use the stem, a really great thing to do is infuse your olive oil or your vinegar or a mixture of the two of them with herb stems. It's going to take up all the flavor of the herbs and make really delicious salad dressings or marinades. Okay, so that's all done. I've got about a cup of dill here, stems included. And I'm just going to put this in here for storage. Okay, next up. So we just finished prepping all of our vegetables, and we're going to work on the chicken now. By the way, I have not kept up with the chat. Irene, is everything good in the chat?
Yeah, everything is great. Sarah was just sharing that she's cooking hot pepper jelly at the same time.
Ooh.
And we were just chatting how that could be a nice touch of heat if someone likes the spicy in a jelly with the sweetness. So
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, I just preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And now I'm going to open up my chicken, and we're going to season it with salt and pepper to taste. So that's up to you. And in an oven safe skillet, we're going to start to heat up 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So what we're doing is we're getting the chicken ready to brown on either side. 2 minutes, I would guess, if that, just to get a nice brown. And then we're going to pull it off back onto a plate because it's going to finish cooking in the oven. So I'm going to do this over the sink because it's messy. I'm just removing the chicken from its packaging. Now, when I'm browning things, I'm going to leave the skin on You don't have to leave the skin on. I'll just cut this little bit off. I need a better, shorter knife for that. So I'm gonna leave my skin on the bird, but it's very easy to pull it off of it. It kind of wants to come off of that breast tissue. So what I suggest is get your finger under there and just pull. There's like a really small membrane that you can pull apart with your hands. But when I am browning a piece of meat, one key a move that I make to help myself out is I pat off any excess liquid, specifically water. We don't want any water on there from the bird. Now mine even has a little bit of dill on it, which is great. So I'm going to get that patted dry. And then we're going to use some salt and pepper. So I'm going to rinse my hands before I touch those. At this point, I would have no issues if you wanted to play around with some different spices. You know, you could even put like a little curry spice on your chicken or cumin. And just for this initial browning, I'm just gonna do salt and pepper though. But you know, feel like you know your taste buds, you know what you like. And if you want to add a little kick or flair, hot pepper, please do so. I'm going to brown both sides. Or, of course, I'm going to brown both sides. I'm going to salt and pepper both sides. So I'm going to flip it around, toss on a little bit, sprinkle some more salt. And so my skin is on. You can remove the skin if you like. You can remove the skin. You just slip some fingers under the skin. There's a thin membrane. You can pull the skin right off if you want. The skin holds a lot of the fat of the bird. Some people want it, some people don't. It's okay. Next, I'm going to roughly measure about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And really, what's more important than the measurement is that my whole bottom of my pan is going to be coated or anywhere that the chicken's going to touch. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this on medium heat and I'm going to let it heat up for a moment before I start cooking my bird. Take a moment to get yourself cleaned up and ready. Gonna be loud on my end for a second. Giving everything a quick little wash down. Specifically my knife. I need to use it again. So while that oil is heating up for your chicken, just going over what we've done already. We've cut up our corn, our green beans, our dill, our tomatoes. We are going to brown our chicken for about 1.5 to 2 minutes on either side and remove it. It's not going to be cooked all the way through. And we'll put it in the oven. Right now my oven is heating up. I set it at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. The next thing we're going to do as we wait for that, and I'll pause you because we're going to have to go back to that chicken in just a minute, but we're going to get ready to make what I would call our marinade or our sauce. So this is what's going to be going in with the chicken and the vegetables to cook. We're going to use 1 cup of coconut milk, 2 tablespoons of brown or regular sugar or whatever sweetener you want, 2 tablespoons of vinegar. I'm going to put 2 in because I love vinegar. You can put less. You can put 1 tablespoon or 2. I don't think it's going to make a big difference either way. Just a teaspoon or a dollop of mustard. Again, this is just a marinade kind of soft served with the dish. If you wanted to do up to a tablespoon, I think it would be okay. Just use your intuition about the flavors that you like. And then we'll use a tablespoon of oil, salt and pepper to taste. and we'll mix in half the dill, and that's it. You can always test how hot your oil is by having a little bit of water on your hand, just a tiny bit. And if you hear that water kind of explode out of the olive oil or oil that's heating up, you'll know that your oil is hot enough. So right now mine is not for browning. So I'm going to start my marinade. I'm going to do a tablespoon of oil. It can be cooking oil, olive oil, whatever you like. I'll measure the rest here. So the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon. Okay, I don't think I can open. There we go. 1 tablespoon of the sherry or red wine vinegar. I'm doing 2 because I like vinegar a lot. I'm doing 2 tablespoons, but you can do 1 or 2. We're going to do about a teaspoon or a decent dollop of Dijon mustard, 2 tablespoons of your brown sugar or whatever kind of sugar you have on hand. Clean it off. So this is a sweet, coconutty, tangy sauce. So I'm doing 1. A little more in there. Pack it down. 2. And then we are going to do our salt and pepper to taste. So for salt, you can always salt it when it finishes. I'm doing about 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then if you have really small grain salt, I would do a 1/4 teaspoon. But mine was large grain, coarse salt. And I'll do about 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. If you want it more peppery, you can. You can also add red pepper flakes to give it a little heat. Okay, so I've got salt, pepper, sugar, Dijon, vinegar, oil. Last, we need to put in our coconut milk and our dill, but we're going to shift gears for a moment. It's now time to brown our chicken. I like to use tongs. I can smell my oil is hot. I'm going to get some sizzling, maybe even some smoke from this. That's the sound I want to hear when I'm browning my meat. I'm going to keep my stove dialed at medium heat. In about a minute or so, I'll flip it. The chicken. While you're waiting, you can certainly open up your coconut milk, but don't forget to give it a really good shake first. Get that fat emulsified mixed in. So you can certainly measure this out. It's going to be about 2/3 of the can or 1 cup. Perfect. 2/3 of a can or 1 cup. And I'm going to do about half of the dill that I chopped. And I'm thinking I might even use the dill that has more, the part of the dill that has more stems in it, just because they'll get to cook longer. So half my dill, coconut, oil. We're going to give that a good stir. So it should be looking like this. Maybe I can get a little closer there. Oh, it's hard when the camera's backwards. I never know which way to look. Salt, pepper, Dijon, vinegar, sugar. You want to stir to make sure that sugar dissolves. Coconut milk, and dill. All right, folks, it's been about a minute and a half. You can peek at your chicken. Check that it's browning. I'm going to show you close. So that is what I want to see. I'm going to let that side cook a little bit longer, maybe flip it over once. Or you want to get that nice browning on the chicken. Okay, and I'm just gonna keep stirring in the meantime to make sure all of my sugar dissolves. You can certainly taste a little. Yum. Okay. So in about a minute and a half, we're gonna take the chicken, we're gonna turn the heat off on the stove. We're gonna put our tomatoes and our corn. It's gonna go in there. And we're going to pour our marinade over it. What I'm gonna do right now is get my green beans ready. So we're gonna do very simple foil pouch green beans. So I'm gonna take a large sheet of aluminum foil. Now, just so you know, if you don't have aluminum foil, you can just toss your green beans in with the rest of the skillet. It'll be just fine. I'm gonna use about a tablespoon of oil or a teaspoon, just a little dash, depending on how many green beans you got in your kit. A little pinch of salt and pepper to taste. Gonna mix those up. And then you're gonna put those green beans in the foil and stick them in the oven. The green beans go in the oven for 15 minutes. Okay. And if you haven't already, you can turn off the heat for that chicken. It'll continue to brown a little bit as it sits. And if you want to just push it off the burner that was hot, you can certainly do that. So again, now what I'm doing is I take my cut up green beans, I toss them in some olive oil, salt, and pepper. And what we're gonna do, good, you can always taste it to see how it's seasoned. You can tell if you want more salt or pepper or whatnot. And what we're going to do here is simply drop them into the aluminum. This is what we would have done if we made fish. We would have made a separate pocket for fish. Fabulous. And then I like to roll up the sides first. So these are going to be steaming. And then I roll up the other sides. We're going to pop those in. Once your oven is heated at 375, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And stick them in. Good, good. Okay, so let's get our skillet ready. It's going to be really hot still, whatever pan or whatever you ended up using, so just be careful. I am wanting to move it a little closer so you can see what I'm doing, but it's pretty simple. There is still oil in the pan. That's fine. I'm going to drop in some of my corn. And I'm just going around the sides of the chicken, almost like tucking it in. Then I'm going to add my tomatoes. Just scattering around. The only thing not going in here right now is the second half of the dill. That's going to get stirred in at the very end. So I've got some fresh summer vegetables in there, tomatoes and corn. And then we'll put our little coconut sauce. And this one I'm going to run over the top of the chicken. Make sure that gets a nice coating. And then around the sides. Just for fun, I'm going to add another pinch of salt across the top and a little bit of pepper, and it looks super beautiful. We haven't even added our green beans yet. Let's show you that. Just a moment. So that's what we're working with right now. I'm so bad at that. Beautiful. So this is ready to go into the oven now. Those are pretty large chicken breasts, so I would say they're probably going to take 10 to 15 minutes to cook. If you do not have a thermometer to measure, which is probably the best case situation, I would pull out the chicken in 10 minutes, cut it open in the middle, and see if the juices are clear or pink. If you do have the thermometer, you want the thickest part to be at 165. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the oven. And in just a minute, you can set another timer or just keep track on the one you already have, that we want to check it in about 10 minutes. Okay. How's everyone doing? All of the cooking part is done now. It's just the waiting part. Only a couple of us. Okay, well, let me know if you have questions. And me and Irene can certainly tackle those. I'm just going to take a minute to get my kitchen cleaned up. You're welcome to do the same.
Hey, Brooke, if we want to use other herbs like cilantro or parsley, could we just add them the same way we use the dill?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can cook some of them in there. It's not too late to throw them in with your coconut milk, and you can also stir them in at the end. I actually was just thinking that I had gotten a bunch of cilantro from Just Roots, so I think I'm going to add some to mine too. Yeah, and once you pull this dish out of the oven, you can also just play with it a little bit. See what else you think. Maybe next time you make it, you'd like to try making pickled red onions with it to put on top, or thinking about different types of fish you might want to mix in with it, or try it with shrimp, or add curry powder next time. It's kind of like a simple blank slate to start a dish off, but it's going to make your chicken moist because it's stewing in coconut milk. It has a nice creamy, rich quality. I encourage you to play around with it for sure. That was a good question, Irene, or whomever asked that first. And so I actually just want to take a minute. I know I keep saying I'm not going to talk and then I keep talking, but to think about if we did use fish. So salmon, trout, those cook, any fish cooks very fast. The nice thing about those using aluminum foil pockets is you can't like overcook the fish because it's just steaming in its own moisture and it's so nice. I think this recipe would work really well for primarily salmon or trout just because of the flavor profiles. And really it would take 15 minutes to put the fish inside of one of those pockets with that sauce and steam it just kind of like the same time path as the green beans. And you do not have to sear it ahead of time like we did with the chicken. You do not have to brown the fish. In fact, it would make it fall apart a lot easier than if you just left it in its little pocket. And this is a really nice summer veggie dish. Get to use local corn, local tomatoes, local dill, local green beans. It's kind of like my treat for the last summer dish because we're stepping into fall, folks. There's already leaves falling off my maple tree out there. So okay, so we have about 9 minutes left. By that time, it'll be 5:55. We'll be able to pull it out. I can demonstrate how to check the temperature of the chicken. And then we can go from there and see if it needs to pop back in the oven for a little bit longer. If you have questions, just go ahead and jump right in. This was a nice, easy recipe. Usually we're scrambling at the last moment to try to get everything packed in. So feel free to share recipes. Also, folks, if you have something in mind that you really want to try out that highlights local vegetables in Western Massachusetts, a dish that we can, source most of the ingredients locally, please do send us that either by filling out our surveys that we send out after these, or just send us an email. We have also talked in the past about having someone else come on and teach a class, and we provide the kits to everyone, but still we have one of our class members teaching a class, and that's definitely an option. If you have a dish that uses local vegetables and it's in season and you want to teach, write us about working that out. We'd love to have other people teach and share their knowledge and culinary work. Cool. I'm going to keep cleaning.
Hey, Brooke, it seems like Jose has a question.
Okay, Jose, you don't have to raise your hand. Just jump.
We're not in class anymore.
Yeah.
It is a cooking class. I just wanted to say the chimichurri sauce that we did a while back, it became a staple inside this house. And constantly we're making it over and over and over to put on everything. It was amazing. It's still amazing.
I know. I love chimichurri. That's exactly how it's been in my life. As soon as I learned to make it, I was like, why this should always be in the fridge. It should just always be there. We had a workshop a couple weeks ago where we made S''CHUG, shug, it's called. A workshop host taught us how to make it. It's cilantro, parsley, garlic, very similar to chimichurri, cumin, cardamom, like cardamom seed. I guess that's optional. Jalapeno, salt, and olive oil, just another variation that adds a little bit of heat, and cumin. Very similar to chimichurri, but it doesn't have vinegar in it. But S''CHUG is another now staple in my fridge. In case anyone wants to try it. I think it would also probably be very good on this dish, especially if we had fish. But it would probably be good on chicken too. Okay. For a minute, I just panicked that I was talking to myself because I thought I muted myself. I'm glad I wasn't.
Well, if you could share me the recipe, I'd be happy to make it.
I don't have the recipe, but I will get it. We made it in class live, so I don't know the exact measurements, but I bet, you know what? I bet I could Google it.
Do you know where that sauce is from?
It's Yemeni. Yemen. Okay. Here is, I'm going to put it in the chat, just the first recipe I found, but maybe you can go online and play around and look for more. Yeah, Tasha Greenwood of Mixed Greens taught that workshop. It was very cool. I don't think I've shared this trick before, but I can't eat dairy. I've been blessed with that curse of not being able to eat dairy. And I love whipped cream. And I've been for years just trying to figure out how to eat good whipped cream. And there actually isn't an answer. There is no good whipped cream without dairy, but there is an alternative. I will put a can of coconut milk in the fridge, even what's left over in this, I'll move it into a jar. The fat separates from the liquid. The fat is up top. You can take the fat out and blend it with confectioner sugar or powdered sugar, and it makes a very good whipped cream, a very good alternative whipped cream. If anyone wants that tip, you could try it out with the rest of your coconut milk that you have. Just a couple more minutes and we'll check our meat. Maybe we should have a whole workshop devoted to making sauces, hot sauces, fermented sauces. There were latkes that were the sample at CSA pickup. I think we probably should have that recipe. Let me just double check in our chat.
I do have it in my house because it was a host that came and did the like cooking with veggies from the CSA. So I don't know if we have it online. I'm gonna try to find it because I took one. So Sarah, I will try to bring into the CSA distro tomorrow, or have it like at least a scan so we can send it via email, because you're not the only one who asked me about that one. They were very, very good.
Was there anything special in them, or were they just regular latkes?
I don't know. They were very good. I didn't grow up eating latkes, so I don't have like a big range that I could compare it with.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a lot of veggies, and I remember she added kale, which it was surprising to me that it was kale. I always tend to think about other types of veggies like potatoes or zucchini. So there was kale, and I think there was corn, and also she made like a sauce with tofu and cilantro that you wouldn't thought that it was tofu, the sauce. It was very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, and delicious.
Wow. Okay, cool. I don't know if anyone read our newsletter, but I wrote all about different fritters and latkes and how obsessed I am with all of those things. And I just can't stop making them. They're probably not great to eat every day, but I don't mind doing it. You're eating vegetables, right? The sauce was it like blended? I've made a avocado cilantro cream sauce with silken tofu that was so good. Was it like that, or was it?
It was tofu blended with herbs and some spices. She said she didn't add the recipe of the sauce to the it wasn't in the paper that she was sharing, but I guess we can ask her too.
Yeah,
absolutely. It sounded that she kind of like improvised it the way she told me. She was like, I just put this and that and that, and like this what is, and I was like, oh, that's delicious.
There's my timer. So that was my timer for the green beans. So I'm going to pull those out, and we'll also check on the chicken. Oven mitts are certainly helpful with this. And there are many ways to cook green beans. You definitely do not have to do this pocket recipe, but I just wanted to show that because that's just a way that I really commonly cook fish. I'll throw in fish with some lemon, herbs, salt, and pepper. So my green beans needs more time. I'm going to put them in for 5 more minutes, but they're like getting close to that perfect. It's still crunchy, but it's not soggy. So I'm going to put them in for 5 more minutes. God, fresh green beans. Nothing like it. So those are going back in. And I'm going to take the temperature internally of my chicken. I'm going to do this because I want you to see a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going into the thickest part of the chicken. I really highly doubt that it's going to be finished yet. It's a nice fat piece. And what I'm going to do is probably flip it. So the other part of the chicken, you could do this or could not, is immersed in the liquid. I'm in the thickest part. I'm careful not to poke all the way through. And I need some more time on this. So I'm going to stick it back in. Another way you can tell, and it's not ready, but I just want to show you. because I'm gonna test. I'm gonna make a cut. And I can see, well, you can see that the meat isn't finished, but I can also see the juice is running pink and red in some spots. So that tells me, nope, it's not ready. Come back in. And basically, I would just put it in for 5-minute increments until your meat is finished. Unfortunately, I didn't have a perfect recipe ironed out for this because we thought we'd be doing fish. But put you back in your spot. Okay, so I think at this point we can free you all, unless anyone has questions or feels nervous about judging whether their chicken's finished or not. If you do have questions, feel free to stay on. I'll stay on for a little bit. And or I would say if you're very nervous about it, you can pull your chicken out, you can slice it, you can put it back into that coconut mixture and cook it for 5 minutes and it'll be done. Sweet. Any questions for anyone? Or do we let y'all free?
I thank you so much for everything. And we can handle it from here because I'm starving. That smells already great. So good luck and see you next time.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye. Bye, Renee. Do you want to stop recording?